All right, Ryan, brought you in here all this way. We flew you into the Zoom conference call, essentially. And the question we all been dying to ask you, do I go out and buy a single family home or do I go and buy a real estate multifamily home and live in it?
Wow, that's a really great question. Unfortunately, one size doesn't fit all, but and it depends a lot on kind of your own personal financial situation. But if you decide to go out and try and house hack, if you will, and you try and buy a 3-unit building, live in one unit, rent out the other two, or buy a 2
Mhm.
flat, live in one, rent out the other one, that can be a great way to start building your own personal portfolio. Really tiptoe and dip your toe into the water of being a real estate investor. So I love that. Some people, though, they want to go the single family home route.
Yeah, because I mean, and then when you go the single family home route, you got to choose like, am I a house guy or am I a condo guy? Right?
Right.
It's
Yeah, especially here in Chicago. I mean, we're blessed where there's so many
yeah,
different opportunities, so many different types of housing. It's really just more of I guess, a personal preference type of thing, but it's also a lifestyle thing. It's a financial decision. There's a lot of different variables at play there.
yeah, and what you've done is you've created a platform called Avail.co, which you can check out I mean, it's not called Avail.co. That's the website, Avail.co. It's called Avail. And when you founded it, you were looking at specifically the landlords, right? That was your goal in mind. You wanted to make a do-it-yourself platform to make it easy. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, of course. So in the United States, if you take a step back, there's about 48 million residential rental housing units. And these are everything from single family homes that are rented out up to condos that are rented to big multifamily luxury high rises. So 48 million units in the US. The simple way to think about it, split it down the middle. Half of those units, 24 million units, are institutionally owned, they're professionally managed. The other half of the units here in the US are actually owned and self-managed by guys like us. Guys who are busy full-time professionals, they're small business owners, they're doctors, they're bankers, they're firefighters, and they happen to own a couple rental units on the side, either to build passive income or to save for retirement. And these guys and gals like us who own these rental properties, historically, they've managed their properties with spreadsheets, pen and paper checks, text messages, phone calls, pieces of snail mail, faxes, etc. And what we ultimately found is that they were looking for tools that would help make their lives easier. I know that about 8 years ago, I was in this camp where I owned a couple single family homes that I had rented out. I had a full-time job working on LaSalle Street, wearing a suit to work every day.
Oh yeah.
And eventually I was like, why has no one built tools to help people like me manage properties? And so when I started Googling for this, I couldn't find anything. I found that those institutional owners, the professional managers, they had software for them. Everyone had ignored the little guy. And so that's where I really said, look, something like this can and should exist.
Mhm.
And ultimately ended up leaving a full-time job, built the product, launched it. And fast forward to today, we've got about 600,000 landlords and renters across
Wow.
the US who use our product every day. So it's been a fun journey.
And so for the average user, average listener that doesn't use your product or know much about it yet, is this a free product? Is it a subscription based?
Yeah, great question. So, like a lot of products out there today,
Hmm.
we have two tiers. We've got a free tier, and honestly, that's 95% of all of our landlords are using that free tier. Um, with that free tier, you get a lot of really powerful tools, basic functionality, works really well. And then for premium features, we do offer a paid plan. And that paid plan works really well,
Hmm.
adds a little bit additional customization that people want. So similar to like a Zoom or a Slack, you can use their free version. You can also upgrade and pay for it.
Hmm. And the advantage, I guess, of using this platform whereas not using it and just kind of going out there and into the world and contacting some real estate agents, what is the advantage versus that, like for the renter, for example?
Yeah, so if you think about a rental property,
Yeah.
historically, a lot of people decide, they've got two paths they can go down. They can either decide to manage it themselves,
Hmm.
or they can kind of hand over the keys to a professional, let them go manage it for them. What we find is that most people who own one or two or three rental properties, they end up managing it themselves. They ultimately don't want to pay a professional, or they can't afford to pay the professional 10% of the rent each
Yeah.
month. So if people are managing it themselves, where we come in is saying, look, those spreadsheets, the pen and paper, the paper checks, the lease agreements that you bought at Staples, like those are great, but there's a much better way.
Mhm.
And so where Avail really comes in is gives that landlord that professional set of tools that
Okay.
helps them manage their property. And then ultimately it provides a better, more tech enabled experience for the renters who are living in the unit. I know back in the day, this is going back probably 15 years,
Mhm.
I used to live up near Wrigley Field. I was right out of undergrad, lived in this rental house. We rented from a guy who lived a few blocks away. And each night that I would get home right around the first of the month,
Mhm.
my roommates at the time, they would leave their checks for their portion of rent on the table. I would write out a check. I would slip the four checks into an envelope. I would
Nice.
walk over to this guy's house over along Ashland, and I would slide it under his door. And I just think back to like how archaic that was and and how silly and how frustrating. I mean, you're
Yeah.
getting home from work at midnight or 1 a.m.
Mhm.
and you're just like, why can't I pay my rent electronically? I can, order a car, order food from my phone, but I'm still paying rent this old fashioned way.
Yeah. So how have you done in convincing older folk, especially like my parents, immigrant parents, and on top of it all, like, they are there, count their dollar bills, pick up their checks every month sort of people. And they've been, they will never, I don't, do you have a method? Have you converted them over?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like with any technology, you've got
Yeah.
early adopters,
Hmm.
and then you've got this chasm where you've got early adopters and then you've got everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a great job attracting all of the early adopters. I mean, when I look at our landlords, our renters,
Hmm.
I mean, these are your stereotypical early adopters. They're like your launch engineer at SpaceX. They're like executives of technology companies. They're
Yeah.
adopting it. Where I think we're still honestly like not struggling, but we're still trying to figure out is what's that right messaging? How do
Mhm.
we get folks like your parents um, to adopt technology? And I think it's something that I know my parents, for example, like 2 years ago when they took Uber for the first time, they're like,
Oh
"What's this
man.
Uber thing? And why are we getting in a stranger's
That's
car?"
amazing.
But now they use it all the time and they love it. So
Hmm.
I think with time it'll happen.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I just taught my dad how to like open a picture on the phone via text message because he can never open it like at a store. I'm trying to tell him what to get. So, maybe I hope so, right? I mean, that could be like a whole nother influx, right? Like once you get there, but every generation, I guess, is a little different. I'm assuming you work definitely a lot more with our age group, I would say, right? A little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, so in the US, there's about 8 million individual landlords, guys like us who are busy professionals and they own rental properties.
Okay.
And so of those 8 million, you can draw a curve and say, how many are younger, how many are older? I think if I look across our user base, yeah, we probably do skew a little bit younger, but I mean, I mean, everyone across the board, our demographics span pretty wide,
Hmm.
along with the types of properties that are being managed. So using Avail today, it's everything from small single family home in rural America, which is great, all the way up to these expensive brownstones in Brooklyn, all the way up to a mansion out in California in Malibu that a professional athlete pays their rent through Avail each month. And it's
Awesome.
like, and everything in between. It's
Yeah.
the coolest thing when you pull up our map internally and like zoom in, and you can click around on
That
these
is
different
awesome.
dots and see what's using Avail.
And I'm sure nowadays, like more than ever, especially going, as we're recording this episode, we're in the thick of things with COVID and the pandemic. What are you doing in terms of, your users? Because I'm sure right away you must have been blown up, right? Early March, must have a crazy time probably for you.
Yeah, the past 8 weeks have been really interesting in a really unfortunate way,
Yeah.
where unfortunately unemployment is at record levels. People are losing their jobs, and unfortunately, a lot of those people who are losing their jobs are renters, and as a result, they're unable to pay their rent.
Hmm.
And so, I think over the past 8 weeks, the role that we've seen us playing in this is twofold. So, number one, how do we just aggregate data? How do we use all of the information going through our system?
Yep.
Again, because we're actually on the ground processing these rent payments from renter over to landlord. So how do we get all that data and give it out to people who would find it useful? So, for example, even this morning, I was on the phone with an alderman here in Chicago, talking about, what are we seeing? And where I think we're unique is that we're capturing the everyday landlord and renter. We're not capturing the luxury high-rise in River North type of rental property. These are I mean, they're everyday people who are both landlords and renters. So number one, it's all about data. Number two, we've been really active in trying to create content and resources around just educating and informing people about what they can do, what their rights are, what they should be thinking about. And I think our overall tone through all of that is, we're all just people. We're all everyday people. We all should work together and find win-win solutions. And I think overall, the response to that has been really positive, where I think historically everyone viewed the landlord-tenant relationship as very combative or contentious, if you
Yeah.
will. What we're
Always.
finding is that right now it's much more collaborative. And I hope that's something that we take out of this and that lasts not only now, but post-COVID as well.
And for those listening, because there definitely are numerous people that are listening that are either renting or, being the ones that are providing the landlords. Where would you send them right now? You said you have plenty of content online, right? You had to. I mean, I know you did. Um,
Yeah, our team has been amazing at
mhm.
creating a lot of content. We've got a specific dedicated page up at avail.co/COVID-19. So
Okay.
just all one word, there's no dash, no space, just avail.co/COVID-19. We've got a lot of great, educational content. We've got resources, we've got template letters. So landlords can download our template letter that
Hmm.
basically they can send to their renter that
Oh,
says,
wow.
hey, I understand that you're probably going through tough times.
Hmm.
I'm here to help. Let's reach out and let's find a win-win solution. So those are all examples of things that we've got up there. People can download them for free, use them, take advantage of them.
Do you think, so that's at avail.co, that's .co/COVID-19, right?
Correct. Yep.
And then we could also obviously at Hello Avail, we could get to your website that way, right? On all social media platforms.
Yeah, all the social media platforms. It's Hello Avail.
Avail. Okay, perfect. And now, what would be your advice right now? Like for the person listening that just doesn't want to go on the website and they're like, what do I do? What are you kind of telling people right now as the best approach to delaying rents? Like, do you forgive it completely? Do you delay it and work out a payment plan right away? Do you tack it on at the end of their lease? What's your preferred method or advice?
Yeah, well, I think number one, first and foremost, communicate. Like, forget getting to the solution for a second. Just put that on hold. I think step number one, landlords and renters in the audience, just talk with, your landlord or your renter. Understand what they're going through, what their situation is. I think on the renter side, a lot of renters just need to acknowledge and understand that, hey, the landlord still has to make a mortgage payment. And on the landlord side, being really empathetic and understanding that, your renter may be your bartender, they may
Mhm.
be your stylist, they may be, I mean, they unfortunately they're not making an income right now. And so it's really being empathetic, trying to understand what the situation is. Then number two, I think it's really about how do landlords and tenants work together and really try and find that solution that works for both. So you mentioned a couple of different options, whether it's,
Yeah.
reducing rent. I know here in Chicago and in many major cities across the US, there's a moratorium on evictions.
Mhm.
So hopefully that provides some amount of stability for the renter.
And that means
Um,
exactly for everyone listening.
yeah, what that means is that basically landlords physically cannot evict you. They
Okay.
cannot kick you out. I know in Chicago it goes through, I believe, through Labor Day.
Oh wow,
I'm
it's
not,
that they pushed it that far now?
I believe so.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, ignore, like, setting that aside for a second, it's really all about just communicate. How do you find a win-win solution?
Mhm.
What you ultimately want to do is find something that works for both parties, whether that's delaying rent, deferring rent, maybe working out a payment plan, maybe on the renter side, if you've got certain skills, or you could go out and make improvements to the property. If you're handy and you can do that, maybe there's
Oh.
opportunities to work together and say,
Mhm.
hey, this summer I'll take care of all the, lawn work around the property. Would you be willing to knock off some amount for rent? And so I think there's a lot of creative solutions that we're hearing about. I know that in conversations with different policymakers, both here in Chicago and across the country, there's a big push for creating more of a standardized solution for the problem. But I think until that exists, it's really incumbent on all of us to try and work together and figure it out.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, like based on what's happening right now, the tenant still has to pay back the money at some point in time, right? They're not just totally relieved of it,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's right. I mean,
Okay.
we're at least as of today, as of May 14th,
Yeah.
we're not forgiving rent,
Mhm.
but it's, so the renter still has that obligation, just like a landlord still has to make the mortgage payment.
Exactly.
But it's one of those that, how do we find solutions? I think it's also important. We don't want, and our stance on this is, we want to help renters. We also don't want to put them in a situation where they've got this huge debt burden that just hangs over them for, I mean, the next 6 months, 6 years. We ultimately, renters need to be able to kind of
Mhm.
pay it back, hopefully in a reasonable amount of time, on a payment plan that works for everyone. And then they're able to just continue building credit and move on and move up in the world. That's our dream scenario is,
Yeah.
let's all work together through this situation.
Have you had any cases where there's, for example, anything questionable going on at properties or any illegal activities or something, and they're like, but you can't kick anybody out. So it's like a fine line, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure those things are happening out
Mhm.
there. Hopefully not within the Avail community, because here at Avail, what we really try and foster is this community of responsible landlords and trustworthy tenants.
Yes.
I know in the media there are some stories out there about, some bad things happening. I would like to think that those aren't happening with Avail properties, but given that we're just a software provider, I can't say for certain.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just meaning like if there's any requests coming in or landlords trying to ask for advice from you guys.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we get those from time to time. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the perks about our product is we're not just software, where we do actually have a team of humans here in Chicago who are available to answer questions, to try and direct you to appropriate resources and stuff.
I think that's very important too, right? Because you're not dealing with random 1-800 numbers that go to who know where, and then you're stuck on hold and you got to put requests in, and then you end up only getting text messages back because, right? from like an outside person that has no idea what's going on about. You actually have a team here. Like I've seen it. I've seen pictures. I know you exist. You're in Chicago. I'm in Chicago. I think that's very important.
Yeah, our team, I can like point over my shoulder like that. Outside of COVID, that's where they normally sit, and they're answering questions, and they're on the phone all day with landlords and renters from across the country. But even with COVID, our team is available 7 days a week, 9 to 5 Central. They're here to answer your questions.
Have you had to make any difficult decisions right now and lay anyone off?
Fortunately, and I feel almost guilty saying this, we have not. I know that there's a lot of small businesses, a lot of startups out there who have been impacted. Their sales have gone down. They've had to make some of those unfortunate decisions. We've been very lucky. I think the rental market is continuing to grow. People now more than ever are looking for technology to help maybe automate this thing, make contactless rent payments, if you will. And so fortunately, we've actually continued growing during this time. We're actually currently looking to grow and expand our team. So it's actually the opposite of kind of having to make cuts.
Well, if anyone's looking out there,
Yeah,
Ryan's the guy. Ryan Coon, find him.
Head over to avail.co/jobs. And there's, I think, 6 or 8 openings up there right now.
Awesome.
Would love to talk with any of the listeners.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Avail.co/jobs. That'd be talk about a story, right? Following up one day and being like, hey, this person, they came from this podcast. Like, that is awesome. That'd be cool. So someone out there, please, if you're listening, make it happen. Let's go. Apply, please. What would you tell though to some of those people that did get laid off? Because I mean, I have a lot of friends. I mean, when you put in like the real numbers of the past layoffs, and it's like you're talking 23, 24%. Like when you add in the actual numbers of past, and I mean, it's crazy if you really look at it. It's like almost 1 out of every 4 people is at this moment not working as of May 14th. What would you tell them? Do you have any advice to those people?
Yeah, I think my number one piece of advice for these people would be, don't take it personally. Like it's an external problem. And I think unfortunately a lot of people internalize this thing and start blaming themselves. And that can cause you to go to some like really dark places if you start blaming yourself for the situation that you're in. So that's number one. I think number two, stay positive. Try and look at this as an opportunity to maybe learn something and grow your skill set. There's a lot of online courses out there from top universities that are now free for the time being. So really try and look at building your own personal skill set. Look at things that you're particularly interested in. Try and keep improving yourself. And then number three, I think it's all about, be out there, be talking with people, be networking, and put yourself in a position where you never know what the future holds and you never know what that next opportunity is. So it's really all about being out there, trying to offer help, and keeping your eyes and ears open for when that opportunity arises.
Right. And I mean, and it will arise. It's just the natural market and natural world that we live in. Obviously, we've never seen this before, but based on history, things always have rebounded.
Yeah. Things will get better. I don't know if it's going to be 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now, but hopefully, and I'm crossing my fingers now, but things return to normal sooner rather than later.
Prediction time.
Oh no.
What and when do you think we actually go back to normal? And when do we, when in Chicago specifically, when does our shelter actually release?
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to look into the crystal ball. It's never really been very good at predicting things before, but
Here we go.
My hunch, I think it will be almost region by region, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, where I think this is a national and frankly a global crisis, but the recovery of it will be more local. And I think we'll see certain pockets. I even saw this morning in the Tribune where, all the collar counties, all the suburbs of Chicago are basically putting their hands up and they're saying, we're not Chicago. So
Mm-hmm.
don't blame us and don't treat us like Chicago. But I think in terms of lifting the shelter in place, I'm optimistic it'll be later this summer. I think that there's too much at stake. I think at some point we're as a city, we've
Yeah.
got to be resilient. I think hopefully more people are respecting the social distancing. People are wearing masks. People are being respectful and doing the right thing. I think as soon as all of those things take hold, we'll get back there.
And these are obviously dark times, for you, for everyone. Have you had another dark time in your life in the past, that whether business or personal, that just kind of carved you into who you are, and that was just very difficult to go through, especially with entrepreneurism, I would say, because it's not an easy place to be. It's a very, very lonely place at times. Not too many people you can relate to. Is there something else that was just as bad?
I can actually point to two things.
Yeah.
So number one, I finished uh, my undergraduate degree back in 2007. I moved up to Chicago. That was right before the financial crisis.
Hmm.
And so I took a job at a large bank working on LaSalle Street in the summer of 2007. Stock market was still at all-time highs. This is before Lehman Brothers, before Bear Stearns. But I'm like first year out of school when those things happen.
You were flying high, right?
I
This
was
was,
feeling good, and then all of a sudden, bam, and the crisis hits, and other people who I had started working with at the bank in my start class, who I sat next to during those early trainings, they were getting laid off. And we didn't know. I mean, no one knew back then what the future held. And so there was a certain amount of holding your breath and hoping, I hope it's not me. And those were dark, those were hard. And I think the amount of uncertainty back then, I was quite a bit younger, but it felt very different from this, where fortunately in this crisis and in this COVID-19 era, we know we have an idea of what the enemy is,
Mhm.
and we know, I mean, there's science behind what the next steps are, and there's a proven path to recovery. Back in '08, man, no one had a clue what was going on, and all of the top Wall Street bankers would convene and they would huddle and they would try and come up with different proclamations. And
Yep.
I mean, those were scary, dark times.
Yeah, it was.
um, the second time I would talk to was, a couple years after starting Avail, and
Mhm.
probably that second or third year was the hardest. Where, in your first year of starting a new venture, you're riding high, you're feeling good, you've got all the juices flowing, and you're optimistic.
Mhm.
And then 2 years in, and you're like, man, this isn't as easy as I thought it was.
That's
What did I do?
that's what I was waiting for.
Why did I leave that full-time job? Why
Mhm.
did I leave the comfort, the safety of it? I remember a point in time, we actually participated in an accelerator program out on the West Coast. So I actually moved out to California.
Hmm.
My co-founder was here in Chicago, and I was living in this like really shitty, small studio apartment, and just by myself, away from friends, away from family. And those were some tough times where it was just this, every day was the same. Everything felt almost similar eerily to like what it feels like now, where there's not as much human interaction. And yeah, so got through that, fortunately moved back to Chicago. And so, yeah, fortunately things have been up since, but I'm sure there's going to be another situation that happens that isn't as positive. So
Why was that situation so bad? Because when you say, "Oh, I got to move out to sunny California, and here I am," and I was all depressed, like, why? Why was it as bad?
yeah, I mean, at that time it was tough.
Uh-huh.
Honestly, just the toughest part was actually the I would say, social distancing. As weird as it sounds, I was in this accelerator cohort with a bunch of other startup founders who could somewhat relate to what was going on and with my business and stuff. But, I had left my family, my friends, my co-founder, my girlfriend at the time. Everyone was back in Chicago, and I'd get these texts about, going out to watch a Cubs game or watch the Hawks in the playoffs. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, why did I do this? Why am I so distanced? And why did I opt to go seclude myself in California to build this company? And that was really the toughest part about it.
Was it worth it?
100%. I think I can pretty confidently, and my co-founder is a really good friend, and he and I have these conversations, these heart-to-heart conversations from time to time. And we talk about, would the business exist if not for that program, if not for the focus that pushed on us?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we both agree that the business in the form it exists today would not have survived. So I think in that way, it was, call it 6 months of pain for kind of numerous years of success. And fortunately, there's still problems and challenges. I would be lying if I said otherwise, but fortunately things aren't as bad as back then.
I guess since that relates to a lot of people now, how did you get through it? Like, what did you tell yourself every day? Did you overconsume something? Did you eat way more than normal? What did you do?
Well, I think it really two things. Number one, I tried to really focus on personal improvement, and made a point to work out every day, to go to the gym, to try and read and learn and study, and really just focus on improving myself. Number two, I tried to always keep in perspective that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And I think during this current situation with COVID-19, that's something that people have to understand is, while it seems really, tough and dark and like this weight will never be lifted, I think, inevitably it will, and hopefully sooner rather than later, but there will be a vaccine developed. I know that Mayor Lightfoot here in Chicago has talked a lot about comparing this to rebuilding after the Great Fire. And I think there's some truth to that, where we just have to really, day in and day out, step by step, I figure out a solution and get there as quick as we can.
Awesome. Nicely put. And with that, we will end off the first part of the show. Ryan at avail.co, as well as at Hello Avail on all social media platforms. Be sure to check him out. Ryan Coon, co-founder of Avail. But here we are, moving on to the second part and segment of our show, where Miro is officially done for this podcast. So I am out. It's good talking to you. Peace.
Great talking to you.
Welcome to the round with no name, because they're all taken.
But it's okay, because Miko, his evil twin, is here to save you from all of humanity. So here we go. Without further ado, you get 10 seconds to initiate an answer. We just want to know a little bit more about the real Ryan Coon. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
And don't ask why you only get 10 seconds. You don't want to know. So that's it. Just keep it at 10 seconds.
All right, Miko, let's go.
Which one? Netflix or Amazon Prime?
Netflix.
Ooh. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
What's your favorite book?
Delivering Happiness.
What are you currently reading?
Pass. I'm not as good. Too busy with work right now.
Not reading anything anymore.
Yeah, too busy.
Too busy.
Embarrassed to admit that.
Stranded on an island. And just in case you are, we're preparing you now. You can't bring a person, but you could bring one thing. What is it?
Probably a computer or iPad.
With a solar powered battery.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Satellite connection.
How do you drink your coffee?
Iced.
Nice. Do you put anything else into it or straight black?
Straight black.
Straight black. There was actually a study in by the Huff Post that anyone that drinks straight black coffee, they show some psychotic tendencies.
Oh boy.
I do too, though. So you're in the clear. If I handed you $100 right now and you had to come back to me tomorrow with 200, how would you do it?
I would bet on black.
Ha. And then go back to the bank account after.
You got it. Well, and good luck finding a casino that's open now to take that action.
That too. If we gave you an unlimited amount of money and you can start up any business you wanted, anything, can't be your own, what would it be?
It would have to be something in travel or hospitality. I know that today it feels weird to think about traveling, but I think traveling is a great way to bring people together, expose people to different communities and cultures.
Awesome. Do you have anything more specific, like anything you actually would want to do with the travel world?
Crazy ideas? No. I mean, it's more of one of those broad topics.
Okay.
And if not travel, restaurants. I would maybe start a pizza restaurant. Everyone loves pizza.
They do. I feel like that's just recession proof forever. Who has been or is your greatest mentor?
On this one, don't have one mentor. I've got a lot of people I look up to and read stuff from, and a lot of different podcasts I listen to.
Is there a podcast you're listening to right now?
Podcast I'm listening to
besides
right now,
Boss to Boss, of course.
Of course, Boss to Boss. So actually, one of the guys on our team, he runs he has his own real estate tech podcast called Technest. So I'm currently binge listening to those.
Awesome. Well, you survived Miko. Miko is actually going to take off. He's done here, but that's good. That's good for you. Take care. Till next time.
See you, Miko.
Miro is back. All right. That guy. He was something else, huh? But you survived. I survived. He let me back on the show. It's been a pleasure having you on today, Ryan Coon of Avail.co. Be sure to check him out. The mic is yours if you have any final thoughts, but I do appreciate you taking the time, and I really look forward to seeing what the future brings. If there's any final thoughts.
Really appreciate you having me, Miro. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate it. I think for everyone out there going through tough times with COVID, just keep in mind and light at the end of the tunnel. It's out there.
It is. Mic drop. Boom. Take care.
That is all for this episode of Boss to Boss. Your next step is to visit bosstoboss.com, where you will find proven techniques followed by professionals to help you make that next step. Again, that is boss2boss.com. And remember, the time is now.